February 2023. This is the fire there in East Palestine.
Actually, it wasn't in East Palestine right there. That is actually across the state line. That's in Pennsylvania. I was standing on, there's a bridge, a railroad trestle bridge. What is it called? The highway goes over the railroad there, the line that the derailment was on. I was in Pennsylvania. I was standing on that bridge, there. Matter of fact, I might have stepped down on the track. You know what I mean? Because I took it from two different perspectives. There was a news channel 21, I believe, out of somewhere. Maybe that's Youngstown. I'm not sure. But they arrived when I was up there. And I'm recording this with a camera that I've got that's got a pretty good zoom. And I offered. I said, "Hey guys, look," because they weren't even taking any footage. They're just standing there looking at it. I'm like, and I'm thinking this is kind of weird. Why aren't they not reporting on this? I mean, the thought did cross my mind. I'm like, man, what the hell? I mean, you don't really think, you're not thinking that that they've been directed not to even report on it. You know what I'm saying? Do you understand how that is? That they're actually controlled by Norfolk Southern. For real. That's just the way it is. And anyway, so I naively asked him. I said, do you want me to go ahead and get this footage with my camera, and we can go ahead and I'll give it to you right now. You can have it because I got a good zoom on this camera. And anyway, I stepped down on the track, because I want to get another perspective from a ground level looking down, which I think this is. I'm not sure if this is the footage here or not, but. Then when I got back up there, when I climbed back up there, they were gone. Now, why I'm telling this now is because I just had a discussion with a fireman, that is here in Darlington Township. And I was mentioning, he actually mentioned to me about the bridge incident. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, when you were on that bridge, this is what he told me tonight. Today is the 29th of July, 2024. He said, when you were up there on that bridge, they sent out the authorities on you. And I had I left and I didn't even have a clue. So I'm saying they saw me up there on that bridge, maybe Channel 21, the news crew that I was, trying to help. They actually reported that I was up there. I'm telling you the truth. Imagine how corrupt how stinking, corrupt, disgusting this. Do you see? It just gets worse and worse. The corruption, just layers of corruption, layers of criminality. They must have said something to the authorities. That there was a guy up there and he's getting video. And I don't have professional gear, but it looks like it could be. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's not like you run of the mill. It at least looks like, you know what I mean. Like if I go anywhere with any of my stuff, people think that I got some kind of a project. like I'm making a documentary or something. You know what I'm saying? I just have a few things. It's just they're not expensive gear, but it looks more than just somebody with a cell phone is what I mean. And anyway, so how about that? They called out the authorities on me. When I was capturing them in Norfolk Southern, they had someone down there. Even I captured that one of their workers that was monitoring the burn. Where they were burning this stuff off. And that was in the in between the derailment fires, those massive fires, that coated western Pennsylvania, Beaver County, going all the way down to like Aliquippa. That you can see it on radar. And I'll tell you, it went further than Aliquippa. I mean, that's just what you could see on radar. That's how thick it was that you could see it on radar. There's a history of this. But it's funny. I was like, he's telling me that. He's like, yeah, they sent the cops out for you. They were trying to get you. They were trying to stop me, from the footage, from getting that footage out. And that's the truth. I'm telling this now. I didn't even know that. So I managed in Jesus' name to escape from that, you know what I'm saying, or they would have probably detained me. I don't know for what would be the justification, but they would have tried to go ahead and get the footage I had. Is that something? But you see, I was only there because, you know, from Chippewa. This is Sunday afternoon, you know, the 5th of February, 2023. I could see that all the smoke was coming over, you know, into Pennsylvania. As I looked from Chippewa, I could see it. It was that thick, it was that much. And I was like, man, what the hell? And the thought entered my mind. I'm like, excuse my language, but, you know, it's appropriate. Are they fucking burning that shit off intentionally? What the fuck? You know, I'm thinking, man, what about all these people that are getting dosed with this shit? You know, and whether it be there, right around, I didn't, you know, because I didn't even factor in, you know, that the winds never did carry any of that into East Palestine. You know, and that the derailment, you know, is actually on, not hundreds of feet from, but on the Pennsylvania border. On the fucking border! You see these goddamn lies that they perpetuate. Just utterly so goddamn disgusting. So they positioned this whole thing in East Palestine. And, you know, the disaster, the people that were injured are here in Pennsylvania! There weren't winds that blew this shit into the town of East Palestine. You know, and good. I'm glad. I'm happy for them if they get fucking settlements, whatever the fuck. Good. Because it's the stigma. As I have heard people say, those that are not continuing the lie that they got fucking contaminated with all the millions of pounds of fucking carcinogenic chemicals that Pennsylvania did. You know, listen, I'm telling the truth about all of this. This should offend you. It should offend you. This could be you. I don't understand. I just don't get it. I don't get it, man. I just don't get it. I don't get it. I never thought that that people can be so cowardly. You know, and I recognize the cowardice in me. I have been a coward different points in my life, and it was the worst feeling that I ever had. One of the worst times ever, you know, is when you are a coward. When you should step up and you should say something, you should do something, you should try to prevent somebody from injury. When you know, there are times that I didn't step up, and it was it was the worst, you know? I mean, I don't understand how people can live with themselves. I don't understand how shareholders, you know, that, you know, in Norfolk Southern and these chemical companies that were, Norfolk Southern was carrying their shit on the line. I don't know how they can live with themselves. They see where the shit went. They know that Norfolk Southern has fabricated this whole narrative. You know, has positioned, using the media, positioned it all in East Palestine. It's called psychological positioning. It's used in marketing and politics. I mean, it's common, man. I went to work for a small advertising marketing group when I got out of the Air Force. The first thing that the art director handed me was a book on psychological positioning. And it turned me off so much that I lost my fervor. I lost every motivation I had to work as a commercial artist, to work as a graphic illustrator. It was gone. Because I wasn't, and look, at that time I wasn't even in the Word of God. But I was struck to the heart about it. Just because I wasn't in the Word, I was raised, you know what I mean, in an environment that I you know, there was a closeness with the Lord. with Yah and through Christ Jesus the Lord. So look, I hear me use some colorful words, but they're appropriate. You know, are you an adult? Can you handle it? Can you handle it? I mean, you just have to think. You know, you think about. Please, you know, think about somebody that gets contaminated with a chemical that causes bone cancer, blood cancer, fucking tumors, what have you. I mean, what is uglier, the word fuck, in context with how horrible that is, what was done, people intentionally being left oblivious about a contamination they could have sheltered in place. Hear me. I mean, what is uglier, the word fuck or that? I mean, what is it? Is the word fuck appropriate? Can you say fuck in context with that? Anyway, so the whole thing, it just keeps getting worse. So I didn't know that it was that much of a complicitness that the media, those reporters, I think it was Channel 2 or Channel 21. It might have been Channel 2. See, that's fine. I didn't get footage of those guys, but it was they were a news station, I believe, out of Youngstown. Channel 27 were stellar. You know what I mean? And I'm not sure if it was. I think it might have been 21 that was on that bridge. I'm not sure though. I'm not sure. But Channel 27, they were one of the networks that really did step up, and they did their best. They defied. They really probably crossed the line. Probably pissed Norfolk Southern off, because they really were reporting on that, but they didn't go far enough, to talk about Pennsylvania. So I know that must have been something they were directed not to do. And if all of these people were called in, were have to testify. Look, my speech, I used to take pride in my speech. I can hear myself talking. I'm having a lot of problems because, let me say this. I will, if you hear me, listen to how cruel, how apathetic my fellow Americans are. I'm a 2-branch veteran, and there are a lot of veterans out there that get injured, in service by no fault of their own, like I did. I had to have 2 spinal fusions from injuries, happened to me when I was in the Air Force. And, I mean, there are so many challenges with that, not having money for the surgeries, being turned away from the VA, suffering with that. I mean, it's something, it really was grueling. It's been a real education and suffering, you know what I mean? So, but with the teeth, not having money for dental care, and you're on medications for 20, 30 years, you know what I mean? Because of pain medications, anti-inflammatories, a whole lot of shit, batch, a cocktail of garbage, and because you're injured and you had inveterate pain, and you're trying to manage these things, so that you can do something with your life. And your teeth, they're soft. The enamel gets soft, so you start losing your teeth. And you know what? Unless you have a 100% rating with the Veterans Administration, if you don't have a 100% rating with them, you can't even get an antibiotic. You go in there. I've gone into the VA. I just recently went into the clinic I'm assigned to in Rochester, PA. I went in there with an infection. I fight infections all the time. Even abscesses in my jaw. So, what am I saying? You can't even get a tooth pulled or an antibiotic. They won't do shit. They hand you a list of dentists in the area. And then a dental school. Let me tell you something about the Pittsburgh Dental School. The School of Dental... what is it called? The School of... Pittsburgh School of Dental Medicine. I went in there. And one time I had 4 or there were 5 extractions that a student did. Now, I had another student that forced a root canal so he could graduate. Do you believe that? He did. It went through the pulp up in Jersey. And I ended up losing that tooth, you know what I mean? Because I couldn't afford the crown, and they'll get infected and I had to have it pulled then anyway. But at the Pittsburgh School of Dental Medicine. Why am I saying this? I'm speaking for not for myself. I'm talking about all these veterans out here, disabled veterans that do not have any dental care. You know, they could have like, you know, I'm talking 60, 80%, or, you know, fucking whatever it is, man. I mean, there are a lot of veterans, they might have a 30% rating, but they fucking are really disabled. And they just don't know how to fucking game the system like some people do. And hey, if people game it, they game it. There's so many people that you know, don't get the treatment, the help that they need. I don't give a shit. You know, I wish there weren't so many people that game. The people that game it should help the people, you know, their fellow veterans that don't know how to even get to, you know, work the system so that you can get the rating you need. I'm just speaking the truth, man. The VA is supposed to help a veteran to get those benefits, and you end up having to fucking, you know, fight to get them. But it shouldn't be that way. They should help you all through everything. Fucking filling out the paperwork, everything they should help you with. You shouldn't have to go to an outside organization or an attorney to help you to file. Anyway, I'm just saying, isn't it a drag? You know, I know I'm off on a tangent, but let me tell you about this student at the Pittsburgh School of Dental Medicine. I went in there and I had my phone on, and he saw it was on. And I said, look, man, it's nothing personal. I said, but this student up in Jersey, you know, he really, really did a number on me. Nothing against you. I don't know you, but I wanted something in case something goes off the rails. So, as it was, man, this kid was really sadistic. I don't know why the hell I just didn't just leave right then, because he was like being really aggressive, and I just thought he chilled out, but he didn't. He ended up doing the extractions, and it was right before Christmas break, and he didn't suture them, and he purposely like raked all that shit with a. He was really doing a number on me, and I'm thinking, this fucking kid, is he fucking maiming me? He was a sadistic son of a bitch, and I have prayed that he, you know, that either, you know, he had a wake up call, you know, that he got straightened around. Because he was dangerous. But he didn't suture it, and everything fell, man. Everything fell in my mouth, you know, like all the flesh. So it's all deformed. And I'm drooling now, you know, because of this kid. This fucking sadistic dental student. And then the school wouldn't do anything about it. The school wouldn't do anything about it. I went up there, and one of the administrators, I said, look at this, man. Look at what he did to me. I said, would you be all right with this? He's like, oh, yeah, I'd be all right. I said right to his face, I said, oh, you are, what, like a company man? You know, and I was like, I just look at him with, I didn't have, you know, the only respect I had is that he's created in the image of God, like we all are. But I'm thinking, you are one sorry son of a bitch. What a piece of shit you are. And I couldn't get an attorney, man, because attorneys, they won't take on a major, like a entity like that, this Pittsburgh School of Dental Medicine, because fuck, they got attorneys up the ass. They got fucking great representation. They can afford it. They got the best lawyers. And I was even told by lawyers, or like, you know, a law firm, I remember telling me, unless you got something like it, someone dies, they kill somebody, or it's got to be that bad, otherwise they won't take on a malpractice suit, you know, dental malpractice against the school. But anyway, saying all that, I lost track of what I was saying, but oh hell, I don't know, where was I going? It's just so insidious, this whole thing, you know, the way my speech, it's kind of hard for me. I hate when I hear myself talk, because I take pride in my speech. I mean, I used to be, I believe it or not, you may not, you know, you're like, how the hell is this? But, you know, I've done some even work with Shakespearean, you know, text, you know, as an actor, and I mean, I used to thought I had a pretty good control of my instrument, you know, talking about my speech and everything. So if you can't, you know, it's understand some of the things I say, sorry, I apologize. But, and I'm sorry that I don't know, it's just, I've just been immersed in this thing. It's hard to get away from it. You know, I live in this town where, you know, we really got dosed here, and I personally did, man. I was seriously symptomatic from the exposure for a month anyway. And it's like to hear all these lies, all this obfuscation, that's the word, all this redirection and this manipulation, this positioning, from this Norfolk Southern and their associates, to see all of this happen and how they're using the media to do this, and how our authorities just don't say anything about what they've done. They will not say, what the hell? What the hell, man? What the hell? Why do they give, this corporate entity, immunity when they've done something like this? I just feel like, I don't know. It is really a weird phenomenon to be in this position and see so many people that are so utterly cowardice. And that goes for every authority, man. Every cop, every lawyer, everyone that's in a position of authority. Every office. They're all fucking cowards. And look, again, that's where I went off on the tangent. I've been there. I know what it is to be cowardice. And it's shameful, but I can't believe it. I don't want to disparage, people. I don't want to embarrass people. But man, I'll tell you, the list. I can just say everyone. I have not met one person that has had the courage or the will to do anything about this. And they know that there were thousands of people that got dosed with carcinogenic, and they got fucking dosed with industrial chemicals, man. Massively. And they're the type of, chemicals that, it's like, the shit gets into you and then causes you to fucking get cancer. I don't know. I don't know about the science, how the fuck that happens, how it alters your chromosomes, what the fuck it does. But these chemicals, they get into you and they're fucking there. They do, like my uncle. My uncle did. He ended up getting bone cancer from exposure to Agent Orange. Agent Orange. They had sprayed it on around a runway that he flew into, and he was just there for a short time in Vietnam. But they'd just done a defoliage. Is that how you say it? I said deforestation before, not deforestation. Though they have used that chemical that, massively. They did, in Vietnam. But I have heard that it was really that bad. Then they would freaking kill everything. You know what I mean? So there would be no cover for, the Viet Cong. Interesting. But my uncle ended up dying from, exposure to Agent Orange. And it took years for that to manifest. And it's the same with these chemicals. This cocktail. Do you know all these thousands of people that got a dose? Everybody got a percentage of this. Some people more, some people not. If everybody if they had sounded the alarm, then everyone could have sheltered in place. They would, and if it would have been directed for them to do so, and there we go. It would have had to have come from an authority. People will listen, if an authority sounds the alarm. We look to the media in times of emergency like that as an authority, and it's like a sacred trust that the media has violated. And talk about a violation. That word isn't even appropriate. It's the worst of violation. That public trust. To intentionally leave people oblivious. I witnessed it myself. It's I've witnessed some evil things in my life, and I've seen some things in Jesus' name. I tell you, I praise Yah that I'm still here to even to reflect I don't like to reflect on it, but it's amazing that I can. And this thing with Norfolk Southern, and this cover-up of this contamination. It's one of the most. It ranks up there. It's one of the most evil things I've ever. And I mean, it parallels. It parallels the type of evil like that you hear about from the crimes of Nazi war crimes, and like I mentioned this before. Like, I don't know. It's like, good Lord. I mean, I don't want to go into this. I know. There's been other things that I've recognized, and even were done to me. When I served in the military, when I started off in the Army National Guard when I was 17. I graduated from boot camp on my birthday, and in '83, I graduated from Fort Jackson, South Carolina. I'm going to tell you about this. Do you know that we were in a separate shot line? I was in the Guard, and there were reservists that we were shuffled into a separate shot line, and I had an adrenaline hit. And I'll tell you what, it's rare that I have an adrenaline hit, and I don't know why that is. But when I have one, man, it's real. It's like, man, when the alarm goes off that way, it's like, man, this shit is real. And it was real. I mean, I realized that we were in a different shot line, and I'm like, what the hell? And I asked the nurse, I'm like, hey, what's going on? Why are we in this separate shot line? We're all supposed to get the same shots. And I knew that. And she looked at me like, like I was dead. Like she was looking at me like like I was a ghost. Like it was over. And she felt like there was a pity, but at the same time, she was doing her job. She kept administering. What the hell was she doing? She wasn't giving the shots. She was like cleaning people up, or I can't quite remember what it was she was doing there in that shot line that I had access to her. There was a person who was giving the shots. They were down the line a little bit. What she was doing, just getting the soldiers prepped. But let me tell you what, we got so sick, the guardsmen and reservists, from whatever the hell they gave us. They gave us some experimental pathogens. We were using a special virus program. I know that for a fact. Oh my God, I barely made it through boot camp, and so did. It was the same way with so many other guardsmen and reservists that were in my platoon. And right after that, we were the last cycle to go through those barracks at the top of Tank Hill in Fort Jackson. They were the old World War II barracks. Do you believe my uncle went through, the same uncle that passed away, that got, had the Agent Orange fucking cancer from that shit? Do you know he went through boot camp in the same barracks that I did? I ended up going through the same barracks he did. That's what I'm saying. When he was going through his training. And they tore them down right after our cycle. And I realized that they did that in case there was a problem with the pathogens. There was uncertainty. Maybe they injected some soldiers with different strains of something. Maybe it wasn't all the same. I've thought about it throughout the years, because the shit binded with me. Like I was almost like a cloak as a retrovirus. But the symptoms were always the same whenever I get sick. Like I was like, damn. And I tried to talk to my unit when I got back to Pennsylvania about it, and nobody wanted to hear about it. Just like now, nobody wants to even hear about this, contamination. People just get real fucking flaked out, and fucking scared. They don't want to even talk about, something that, they should be screaming about, And anyway, so I mean, that was pretty evil. And you think, well, why would they use guardsmen and reservists? Why would they be used, in a secret virus program, fucking as guinea pigs for various pathogens? Pathogens, it doesn't mean it fucking kills you. It's something that could debilitate you. Like, if they could infect, and let me tell you, I'm gonna fill you in on it, because it gets even deeper than that. Because when I went through at Fort Pickett, we went for like the 2-week active thing, that you do in the Guard, and they put us in this area, and we were put into like a buddy system. and they handed us a thing of repellent, like a little bottle of repellent. And they're like, look, we're trying out this repellent. And we want you guys and your buddy, you and your buddy to strip down naked every hour. Listen to this shit. On the hour, strip down and count how many ticks you have. Let us know how many ticks you have on you. And I was like, what the fuck is this? Like they haven't fucking found a repellent. I thought this shit's ridiculous. Well, here, folks, it wasn't the repellent that they were testing. They had dumped a bunch of ticks in there, in that area that we were in, and they wanted to see how successful of a vector they were. Because if you infect the ticks with, a pathogen, a bacterium, and then you dump them, you dump them over an area that the enemy is in. If you manage to do that, then the ticks are going to, give them the virus, and it will give the intended. It will cause to be what you intended it for, to debilitate, the enemy that way. It kind of makes sense, doesn't it? That's one of the uses for it. I mean, you can be more creative, I guess. But that was done. So, I've seen some yeah, well, it doesn't matter. I'll tell you what, weigh that with authenticity, or if you question that, let me share something else with you. I recorded when I lived up in New York City, in the environs. I lived in Manhattan, I lived in Queens, I lived in Jersey City, where my wife and I were up there for over a decade. When I lived in Jersey City, I recorded the most complete video chronicle of the World Trade Center attacks on 9/11. The most complete chronicle. There's nothing that even comes close to the chronicle that I captured. And I was cut to the heart about so many people, trying to escape from the television set at that time, because they had that shit running on a loop, it seemed, for months. It seemed like it wasn't just a week. It was like it ran over. It's like it's so long they fucking pumped that into people. You know what I mean? It's like, people were just programmed with it. I was thinking about all the family members, people that had someone that they cared about that were in those buildings, and every time they're trying to fucking escape from it, man, and they can't. Like, everybody's got a fucking TV on. They're showing the towers collapsing, the fucking planes flying into the buildings, and the horror, and they had to keep reliving it. So I was cut to the heart. I just said some cuss words, but let me tell you, in Jesus' name, I know that God cut me to the heart about it, to not release the footage I had. And not footage, it's a chronicle, Why I'm speaking that, go ahead. And most people, when I tell them that, the next words out of their mouth is, so you were up there. They don't even get it, man. They don't understand what I'm even saying. So, I'm not lying. And it is truth about the secret virus program. You can take that to the bank. And there is someone that is listening to this that knows that I'm speaking the truth about it. They know that I'm telling the truth. So, yeah, I don't know. Probably a lot of those guys didn't make it as long as I have. It's only been by God's undeserved love and kindness, Yahweh's love and undeserved kindness, that I've made it through a lot of really bad bouts. I didn't even have health care most of the time. I didn't have access to antibiotics or nothing, man. No antivirals, nothing. I mean, my mother had horses, so I'd get Bactrim from her, and I would buy ciprofloxacin from the pet store, or online, pet supply. That's what I did for years, to nurse this fucking, retrovirus, or what the fuck it was they gave me. My wife and I, we in our intimacy, she never caught any of that. I never, it's something that binds with a host. It was engineered, and, anyway, it's why I'm telling you this is because there's a lot of evil shit that goes on, and the guardsmen and reservists, this is why I went down that on a tangent, but the reason why they would do that with guardsmen and reservists, if you haven't guessed already, they go back to their home unit, and at that time there was no health care. I don't know about now, but back in 1983, 1984, 1985, I don't know how long, I don't know what it is now, with guardsmen and reservists, but you couldn't get nothing. There was no health care whatsoever, if you're a guardsman or reservist. So what? They can, whoever it is conducting the fucking experiment on a guardsman or reservist with a pathogen that they gave them through boot camp, they can just monitor them from afar. And then it's more of a statistician kind of situation where you just check off, okay, what did this person get? Oh, so their health was failing. That they fucking died when? Oh, okay, of what? It's like they can keep track of everything. Then you can monitor it, and you don't have to spend any money. The only money you're out is the person that is conducting the test, the statistician. I know that this was done. I'm certain of it. How fucking evil is that, man? How fucking evil is that? And we're talking a long time ago, but the people that were involved in those programs that conducted them, they're not in the office now. They're not, working. I'm sure they're not, working in our armed forces or, there's might have been contractors. That were developing these agents. But I'm telling the truth. I just, I don't know. I never expected this thing like this with Norfolk Southern, that I would ever see anything like this. I never knew the control that corporations have on our government. I just never realized this, And the media, it isn't that they're fake media. I mean, they're tools of, of the corporations, whether it's, big pharma, you'd say that, or Norfolk Southern, or any one of their associates, these multi-billion-dollar corporations, and they own the major media, and then it's just crazy, man. It's just I don't know. It's I just want to move, to tell you the truth. If I had an opportunity to move somewhere, if I had, here I am. It's just pure fantasy. Here I am in this little house in Darlington, stuck in this fucking, shit. Can't even have a garden. I had a little joy there. At least I could plant something, and I had a spring here in Darlington. I could go and get the water from the spring and water my garden. That fucking aquifer got hit so hard, the night of the derailment fires. Yeah, I wouldn't use the water. And I don't know about now. Nobody will tell us anything. Nobody tells us anything. I mean, they waited, a month before they even made this area part of the disaster, officially. If they would have cared about the people here, I say they would have cared. I'm speaking, specifically now to whoever knew. I don't know who all knew, You'd think that everyone in authority really knew, that this area was hit. And they would have had the EPA in here and done the right thing. They had been doing a lot of sampling, finding out how bad things were. And then they could have acted appropriately. It's heartbreaking, man. It's heartbreaking. It really is. It just breaks your heart when you want to go ahead and, allow yourself to realize what it is. If you stay in this like self-imposed, willful ignorance, willful denial, then you'd never see it. You can gloss over it. If you're in a state of like protecting your fragile ego, you don't want to feel like a coward. Well, you'll create some other reality, that will make you feel better about yourself, so you don't have to deal with what actually is reality. But I don't know. I don't know what to say any more than I have. I've said all that I can, really. And I don't know. I don't know. I wonder. It's really in God's hands. And I don't care what anyone thinks about, the fact that I believe it was meant to be. It was appointed that I captured that video, that I captured the fallout. It was meant to be that it was released when it was, exactly when it was. It was released immediately, timestamp. Everything, all the evidence is irrefutable about everything that I've said about what happened. And as you see, it's even deeper than what I thought. Tonight, we're better than now, a year and a half almost from that time and of the derailment and everything. And here, my neighbor tells me, like, yeah, when you were up on that bridge, they sent the authorities out. So the firemen, they talk about that. They talk about this guy that was taking the video of, them intentionally burning it off. The tankers, the containers, and how they sent the authorities out to try to stop them. So, it shows that they knew what was going on, and everyone kept their silence. And it's really disheartening. It's really disheartening. And it's, when you can hear, even our chief law enforcement officer, it's who our president is. When he says that nobody is above the law. And hey, I don't care if you don't like Biden, I don't give a shit. I've always liked him. I have always had a love for Biden. I defended him when I first got out of the Air Force. I heard him speak, and I was like, man, he just grabbed me. I was like, man, he just felt so much. He really conveyed that I believed, he had me. And I'm a big fan of John McCain. He helped me a little bit, with getting a little bit of a percentage from the VA. And I didn't tell him the whole story about what happened to me in the Air Force. I was tortured in the Air Force. My last duty in the Air Force, I had to convince myself that it was duty. But I was made to sit at attention when I say a high wooden chair, I don't mean so high that my feet weren't touching the ground, but it was high. It wasn't like low. When you're sitting in a lower seat, you can use your legs to support you more. But I needed to have medical attention then. The injuries that I had in the Air Force led to me having to have 2 spinal fusions. So I had to sit at attention in a high wooden chair for days on end. I had to convince myself that it was duty. And what happened was I was married to a black woman, and I had a very prejudiced, NCO. What the hell? NCOIC. An NCO in charge, of the unit that I was in. And he was this guy would make you fucking miserable. He was just so fucking prejudiced, and the shit he would say to me, and I got so fed up with it. I went to Social Actions. That's a group that's a unit they have, they had there at the base I was stationed. And I was like, man, this guy is really the worst. And I was telling the Captain Ayers there at Social Actions all about it, and when I got back to my unit, the first thing that my NCOIC said to me when I walked in the door, Sergeant Beauchamp, he said to me, Airman Kosher, he said, I just got off the phone with Captain Ayers. He said, you and I, he said, him and I have been friends, we've been friends a long time. Oh, I've known Captain Ayers a long time. he said you were saying bad things about me. And, I mean, Captain Ayers was black, Beauchamp's black. And man, you wouldn't believe just how prejudiced of a time that was, where I was stationed. And even there at Shepherd Air Force Base, Altus Air Force Base, Shepherd Air Force Base. I went into Shepherd Air Force Base and was bounced around like I was a pinball in a pinball machine by the black dudes in there, man, until they pushed me out the door. I'm fortunate I didn't fall on the floor. They probably would have kicked the shit out of me. But it was something else, man. It caught my marriage, I ended up getting a divorce, from this, and I didn't, and my unit even told me, they're like, if you forget about her, we'll help you. Help me. Yeah, we'll help you. Because when we went through the divorce, I got saddled with a lot of debt, and she had been through a divorce, so she had experience, and I was like always one step behind her in that process because I wasn't, I just wasn't prepared. But the pressure that Beauchamp and her unit too put on us, they destroyed our marriage, and I told my aunt about it. I'm like, man, this fucking guy, he's like the worst. I mean, his hero was O.J. Simpson in The Klansman. He'd say, and he'd talk about how much he loved, that movie, and seeing O.J. Simpson, on a tear, killing white people. And he would say shit to me like, because he was like, he really just was so insulting, man. He's like, Amakosha, I've been with all kinds of women. I've been with Filipino women, Chinese, white women. But, he went on, I don't know how many, he said, I had all kinds of pussy. He said, but that black pussy, you know what I mean, don't you, Amakosha? Is that what you like? You like that black pussy? He would just go on and on. He segregated me, put me up in an area in the building, this old building we had. I was up there all by myself, man. He separated me. He was just so fucking sadistic. This guy was sadistic. He had taken some psychology courses, and I think he thought himself to be like Freud. He would fucking run these experiments, man. And I told my aunt about this guy. And my aunt Omi, man, she was like, she was always willing to help anyone she loved, man. She would go to bat for them. And I learned this, but not quick enough. I was a little naive because she went to her congressman where I live now in District 17 in Pennsylvania. Then, this was like in 1987, maybe? I don't know. But anyway, the congressman, I don't even know his name. They opened a fucking congressional inquiry on this shit. Now I heard that something was happening. I'm like, man, I got fucking nervous. I'm like, damn it, I really didn't want anything like that. I was like, and I mean, here's what happened in the interim from that time that this guy, this Beauchamp was such a jerk off, and going through all that, going through the divorce, all the shit. I became the best that the Air Force had in the job that I had, and I was awarded for that, and they told me, they're like, we're going to have you go work at the Pentagon in honor of this. I was awarded the best in my AFSC, and I was like a shining. I was a wonder. I was considered that a wonder boy in the Air Force in my job. It was amazing, man. I mean, I felt that I was like, damn, this is amazing. And then, after all this time, that fucking congressional inquiry hits the base. That I had nothing to do to even talk to a congressman or anything. My aunt did. And what happened is that our base commander, Colonel Hazeltine, who I had done work for, I knew him. I had a lot of respect for him. And he was passed over for Brigadier General because of the congressional inquiry. That's what I was told. But I went from waiting for orders to work at the Pentagon in honor of being the best in my AFSC in the United States Air Force. I went from that to them removing me from the unit and working with prisoners, and I wasn't a prisoner, but I was out there working with them. And I'm like, I had some pretty humble beginnings. I was raised on a farm, whatever, shit, whether it's cleaning horse stalls and doing all kinds of shit, man. You live on the farm, live out in the country, it can be humbling at times. And I'm like, I'm not humbled by the shit. I'm like, I know what you're doing. Like, what are you going to do, though, with me? I'm thinking to myself, what are they going to do? Are they going to fucking try to get rid of me? I know they're trying to make me look bad. What are they doing, though, exactly? Well, they were doing a bunch of backdating, fabricating, trying to justify to make me look like I was some kind of a bad airman. So they could make it look like the whole thing was frivolous. This whole accusation about Beauchamp and the unit, the prejudice that I'd went through, like that was all BS. That's what they were trying to do. So they worked up, they did some they actually, I was like considered, I'm not exaggerating. What I just said is true. It is silliness, man, of what they did. They dequalified me on a lettering system that was made for people that couldn't do hand lettering. I was a hand lettering, a calligraphist, a specialist, and they dequalified me, which then they used that as justification to take my supervisor position and to demote me even. It was a silliness. It was hearsay. It was bullshit. I don't even know if they had anything substantial in the paperwork that they were torturing me for me to sign. You see, I held out because I thought, you know what? If this is from this congressional inquiry, there has to be an investigator that's going to come in here looking for me. And I was thinking that, so how long I was being held there at base command, how many days, how long that went on, I don't even know. And that's the truth. I've often thought, how long was I there? And I don't know. I don't know, because there was a point where I was like, okay, I had things happened. Like there was one point where I had a wake up call. Like, I had a moment where I recognized that something had happened to my psyche. Like, something had broke, and I was like, wow. I had that like epiphany. And that's I'm telling, it really happened. I mean, I remember that happening. And I'm like, holy shit. I've heard about people, snapping, like something happening with their psyche, and it happened, and I recognized it, and I thought that was so bizarre, man. I was like, I recognized it, and I'm like, whoa, because I had to convince myself that what I was doing was duty. See, I was never unbecoming, to duty, or I never disobeyed, the orders that were given to me. I never defied that. I was a good airman. I'm not saying I was a great airman, but I was a good airman. And certainly through that whole situation, I behaved myself as I should have, with honor. And something happened, something happened where, I don't know, man, it was really weird. Because it was hard. I had to break through a lot of pain barriers, because they wouldn't let me leave to go to the hospital, like to have any treatment. And I didn't have any painkillers or anything. And these were injuries, honestly, they led to my having to have my neck and my lumbar fused. And so they were raw. They were bad, and the way I had to sit, it just exacerbated that. But I was thinking maybe somebody would come to rescue me, surely I thought, but they never came. And then I started thinking they're probably not going to come. And then I had the thought, I'm going to have, if I were to fight this, which I knew I could fight, what the hell they were doing, because what they had done, was how the hell could they possibly, make this case? But then I got to thinking about having to return to my unit, and that everyone that had betrayed me, they were complicit in it then, and I would have to tell what it was that was done. And it was a slow kind of thing, the way that it played itself out, because they really didn't have anything. So what it was that they did was all wrong. Was I perfect? No, I wasn't perfect, but they did a lot of fabrication and exaggeration, and I definitely, I had somebody that, when I agreed to sign the paperwork, then the first sergeant of the headquarters, squadron headquarters, the base command, the first sergeant, he wouldn't let me sign and just go. He kept hold of me. He wanted to make sure that what I was doing, that I was going to sign. So I had to then stay on for several days, sitting at attention like that. And those days, I don't know, man. I knew that I was done, so it was easier. It was easier because I knew that it was only a matter of time then before I'd be signing the paperwork. He'd let me sign the paperwork, because he wouldn't let me sign it. He wanted me to sit at attention for a few days to make sure that I wasn't, I don't know, he's whatever reason. But it was kind of weird, because when I did sign the paperwork, he wanted me to look at it. And I was like, I said, that's all right. I don't even need to look at it. And I didn't even look at it. It didn't matter. I didn't even give a shit. I didn't care at that point. I knew what they were doing then. They were getting rid of me. They were using that to fire me. And the only thing they could do is give me a general discharge. There was nothing dishonorable in anything that I had done through that time. Nothing. But man, that was something, man. I had to put that shit behind me. When I got out, there was somebody that wanted to help me. And I think they were appointed of the Lord, in Jesus' name, to give me an opportunity to fight back in there. God, believe it or not, man, I'm telling the truth. This guy was on fire to help me. It was my cousin's husband. I went to stay with him. He was in the Air Force. And this was, I think at Tinker. Maybe it was at Tinker Air Force Base. Anyway, Cheryl's husband, John, and he wanted to help me, and I didn't want nothing to do with it, man. I just didn't want to go through any more of it, so I was done with it. And it was a long road drive back, to my folks and everything. You can't even begin to tell them that kind of a story, so they thought that I was a fuck up. Everybody, anybody that knew that that they knew anything about, the fact that I had just gotten fired, which I don't know who all knew besides my parents and immediate family, but they all thought maybe I did something really wrong. Even though my aunt, I had told her, I still felt uncomfortable. I wasn't given any respect whatsoever. And I was like, okay, well, this isn't something that I'm gonna put my dignity on, my service now, because it's gone. I have to put this behind me. I had a set of blues, and I had a set of greens, my dress greens, my dress greens and blues. Blues from the Air Force and greens from the, time I was in the Guard. And I fucking burnt all that shit up in a burning barrel. Oh man, I was crying. I was actually crying. It's a horrible time. But I knew I had to put it behind me. I couldn't go on. I couldn't go on thinking about all this shit. I had to put it behind me, and I didn't want to think about what I went through, and oh my God, it's kind of hard not to, and it was fucked, and I couldn't even get help with, getting surgeries. What I had to do to get surgeries, in Jesus' name, what I had to do, God has forgiven me. I went to the VA, and they wouldn't help me. They turned me away, up in Jersey. I was to the point where I couldn't hardly do anything, man. I felt like I was a wounded, animal, like, waiting for a fucking, a lion to devour me. Like I couldn't, I felt like I was done, it was over. Without the surgeries, I was done. It was that bad, because I had to wait so long to get them. And even, the surgeon that did the work on me, he told me, he said, you waited too long. You got scar tissue on your thecal sac, the sac around your spinal cord. He said, you're probably going to have inveterate pain, even with these fusions. And there were bone spurs, my neck. It was horrible. It was bad, man. So he did a good job, though. I mean, considering, even though the neck is jacked, I'm careful what I do. Everything is, I'm careful with it. I'm limited in a lot of ways. I have to be careful. Yeah. So, isn't it something how things turn out?